Hello everyone and welcome to round 1 of our July FFA Tournament. This game we are going to be featuring Crabtree, Lyle, FoxBlazing, and Galois. However, the overall tournament going on does consist of 20 players separated into 5 different teams. Participants and teams will be posted in the description below for YouTube. And of course, anybody watching live can usually find that information on Discord. So, worth noting that winning a game will provide a team with 2 points, whereas performing a buyout will provide the player's team with 1 point. Majority buyouts have their own system for being handled that we're not going to go into too much detail here, because people are finally managing to get onto the map, and we have a lot of scavengers along with one lonely little expanse of this game. No big surprise. We can see that most of the iron actually seemed pretty annoying this game. I mean, you've got a bunch of high iron tiles and none of them have adjacency, so what's the point? Let's be honest. So it's no big surprise to see all these scavengers. Worth noting that with dry ice, though, scavengers can not really expect to make too much money on carbon if everybody handles their carbon income well. So Crabtree could be in an interesting position here with a stranglehold on the iron and steel market unless these scavengers make sure to go ahead and get into it themselves. Just something to think about. However, our scavengers, as expected, off to their very quick starts. We had FoxBlazing really blazing the trail through this game early on. Looks like managed to stomp quite a bit of carbon and have 3 carbon tiles that they've taken, which is a little bit overzealous to me in a game where, as we were just discussing, you've got other scavengers who are already pulling in carbon. That said, they're not pulling in a whole lot of carbon. Lyle, in fact, even prioritizing, both these players prioritizing carbon closer to their headquarters than the strongest carbon available. In particular, Galois, I imagine, he likely got down after... Let's see if we can scroll up through. No, Galois got down first, but Lyle got down at some point as well. I wouldn't be too surprised if there was some blocking going on here, one way or another, that would have prevented Galois from picking up these tiles, which would have made things a little more difficult for him. Lyle, though, I'm a bit surprised that he selected to go for just the adjacent carbon, rather than just taking the best carbon available. Maybe a little bit of a misfound there, depending on exactly what was happening. Also worth pointing out that aluminum isn't particularly pleasant this game either. You can see it's already spiked up to $40. That's just because there isn't good aluminum available on the map for the most part. Let's see if we can find the other 2. Yeah, a couple more over here. Like, Galois can get some adjacency going so that he can get 3 aluminum per second if you would like to. FoxBlazing, though, has the best aluminum available, and Crabtree, despite having that stranglehold on the steel and iron market in particular, didn't take enough iron immediately, it looks like, to keep things evened out. So now iron is more valuable than steel, which makes everything awkward. Just going to transition completely out of steel, which is a dangerous move when you're the only one making it, but maybe he just feels the need to make money right now. And the reactors do have a shot of doing just that, as we had so many players get into chemical refineries early this game, expensive carbon, and laboratories at the neutral. Make that no real surprise, but people will flood that chemical market fairly quickly, even with the neutral pressure. And you can see 2 of our players actually transitioning out of those chemicals and into the fuel and oxygen production. So Crabtree looking like he might be in some trouble, just struggling a little bit in the background. Steel, with no additional pressure on it, goes cheap early, and then eventually it'll kind of rebound once he starts buying a lot of it himself, but definitely not a bad idea, I think, to try and make money on these reactors that everyone else has made so valuable. But he's going to have to do a lot to pull himself into this game against these 3 scavengers, and I don't know if transitioning out of steel completely was what was going to get him there. And on top of that, if you're going to make that move, my other big concern about it is he's already got 2 metal mines down, pulling in 4 iron a second. That iron's very close to being absolutely worthless. And so maybe if he had planned around it better, he could have taken iron in a way that, and gotten his steel down in a way that he was handling these prices a bit better, being a bit more measured in his steel consumption and production. Regardless, Crabtree has made it up to 3, which is certainly an important accomplishment at this stage of the game. But once again, FoxBlazing just in a position to dominate everyone, I would say. Power surge is important, going to shut down a couple of those reactors, but they were becoming less and less valuable by the second as everyone moved into reactors at HQ level 2 and 3. My big thing here is just these these aluminum mines. And what I want to start seeing is I want to see nukes start dropping. I'll be honest. Let's see. I'm not so sure about Lyle, who elected to take a low metal mine of similar distance, but slightly less distance, compared to a low metal mine over here for the adjacency. Now FoxBlazing is going to take some adjacency themselves,
The black market is open,
which is just fine, because aluminum's $151. Usually I'm skeptical about players committing multiple tiles to aluminum just because they do become worthless in the late game, like 100% of the time. Aluminum drops to like $10 in the late game. But there's so much potential to make money here. Nuke's finally starting to fall. I'm glad to see that. Crabtree is going to be our initial nuker this time. He's going to knock that high down to a low. And usually I'd get after him about that because there's a perfectly good medium right here, except that the adjacency makes the high more vulnerable and the high more valuable in general for this moment. And on top of that, FoxBlazing is the person that I'm scared of the most right now in this game. They have a lot of cash. They're already HQ4. Not enough debt to really knock them out, and some control of their power with this geothermal plant. So, and another, let's see, we've got glass kilns coming up over here. Yeah, that's all going to be just fine. So I can support trying to slow FoxBlazing down at this point. Lyle, doing his best to keep up. The chem refineries that he stayed in when everyone else got out are still making money. Not great money if we compare them to things like the farms, the glass kilns. They're not going to be fantastic, but they will get a job done at least. And it's always nice to be in a market that doesn't have any competition. More underground nukes coming down. This time Lyle is going to be hit. FoxBlazing just feeling the need to spread the pain a little bit. That's going to hurt because, once again, there are not a lot of aluminum on this map. And so these nukes are going to be hugely impactful. That is really going to hurt Lyle. I mean, look, you've got trace aluminum here, low aluminum for the adjacency. He could expand into more, but the question is, after you've done all these transitions, all these expanding your aluminum production, what do you do if aluminum finally falls out? If the game lasts that long? If the game doesn't last that long, yeah, whatever commitment you make is going to be solid. But FoxBlazing trying to put themselves into a position to finish up this game very, very quickly, it seems. Already sitting on, let's see, 87,000, all of their resources and cash combined. Definitely a good amount of glass saved up right there. We can see 80 glass stored away. That is likely for the upgrade, possibly what FoxBlazing is looking to do, but I'm unsure if that's what they want to do. This upgrade is very, very expensive. And I mean insanely expensive, right? Have to pay $48,000 just for the aluminum. Then that spikes the aluminum price. That's the potential for people to make money from the aluminum out from under you. Not a position you really want to be in if you can avoid it. So it is possible that FoxBlazing will be looking to try and store up enough money to do something like kill Lyle, or at least threaten them. Alright, well, Lyle, kind of sensing that impending danger, starting to buy up stock. FoxBlazing going to do the exact same thing. So we're just going to have a defensive game from everybody for the time being. Lyle has moved into food. A lot of people in food, which means, of course, water is spiking, food is dropping out. Aluminum still very, very strong. Glass is still also a very, very valuable resource to be making right now, as I do believe we've had Lyle pulling in silicon for quite some time over here, which has really helped keep that silicon price down, and FoxBlazing is going to be the one to take advantage of it. Now, I am concerned for Lyle. These wind turbines have not been providing enough power, and with the slowdown strike, that's even more painful. On top of that, we've had these shipments going very long distances for Lyle for this aluminum, and this aluminum over here. Not great to be shipping resources such a long distance, especially as a scavenger or a scientist who don't have any benefits to help alleviate those fuel prices and that fuel cost in some fashion or another. Expanses, of course, with their fast ships and robots using power instead of fuel, make things a little bit easier. But as a scavenger, these are very, very long distances, and you can see they're costing quite a bit of fuel per second. Used to be more when they were actually making more resources, but still, all of this has turned into a situation where Lyle is already in D levels of debt, and having to try and pull yourself out of that when you've got an opponent who's fully bought up their stock, is in a position to maybe hit 4. I mean, FoxBlazing is at C. Not a pleasant position either, but certainly a lot more comfortable than D. We can see there's about a 50,000 difference here. So Lyle has decided to go ahead and buy more of his own stock. This is something that I actually find a little bit questionable, because what you likely want to do is try and use that cash to upgrade. You've already gotten yourselves in massive amounts of debt. You can't really afford to defend yourself all that much. Offworld market does get blown up fairly quickly over here. No big surprise there. Let's see, that was FoxBlazing just paying attention, making sure that we were going to keep all Offworld markets shut down this game. And this is also what I was talking about earlier, by the way. We can see that with this shortage of aluminum, glass being so expensive, well, that means the carbon is down at $4. I think it hit $1 for a moment. FoxBlazing was sitting on 1,300 carbon at $1. Now it's back up to 9, which is 9 times as valuable and still not even worth talking about. So this was my concern with taking this much aluminum. We can see that slant drilling has also gone toward FoxBlazing, so this is just unnecessary at this point. I mean, even if we count up adding like all the buildings and 2 Offworld markets, FoxBlazing has enough carbon now and can pretty easily transition out of 1 or 2 of these tiles, I would say. And there, we finally do see a transition. It's going to be all 3 into some better production. That is good to see. You can see that Lyle had already kind of made this decision and was like, man, carbon's really cheap. I guess I'm just not going to worry about it and go ahead and get into some glass production. It's a nice move out of Lyle. I'm just concerned that his debt is going to be too much to overcome, especially considering Galois, during all of this, hasn't been messing about with the Optimization Center or the Patent Lab, but has managed to get up to HQ level 5 due to not securing his own stock, just trying to sneak in here and make it back into the game. That he was really just lagging behind everyone, especially the other 2 scavengers for a while. Crabtree still stuck on 3. Can't say I'm too surprised about this. The thing about transitioning out of your steel is it makes it more and more difficult to make other transitions. So yeah, he moves into the electrolysis reactors, and those will make him money for a while, but then he needs to spend a lot of that money he can either get steel back online and hold on to his money, because that just takes iron, and he has plenty of iron, or he can spend quite a bit of money on steel, raise that steel price up, get into something else, and everything just gets awkward at that point, because then steel gets expensive, and he eventually has to get back into it, and everything becomes very, very difficult. And unsurprisingly, because of this, combined with the consistently high aluminum cost that has finally dropped down to something reasonable, Crabtree has just really, really been struggling to get upgrades going. Let's see. Galois and FoxBlazing are R2 at HQ5. Galois has the money, but I have to say FoxBlazing should have the tech advantage overall. We can see that the Optimization Center is down, but hasn't gotten much done just yet for Fox, and now has been blown up, which isn't going to be helpful at all. But the Patent Labs are definitely helping out FoxBlazing and Lyle. Lyle has picked up teleportation, which is a nice move when you're shipping from so far away, and also I like the idea that he'll now be able to potentially use this triangle that he could set up here. He could add a tile here, add a claim, set up a triangle, and then be in a nice position to actually make some money from those tiles. They are difficult to transition tiles, so you might want to set up something like electronics very, very far away, but with that teleportation, he does have more options that he can use with these metal mines, and I think he should actually start transitioning them now, because as we can see, aluminum is dead and is very likely to stay that way for the duration of this game. Alright, keeping up with things, Galois and Fox once again on similar amounts of money. My big concern for Galois once again is just that the tech isn't there. The Optimization Center only just now came down. It's heading into chemical refineries, which is fine. You expect that chems will kind of be going up in price with all these laboratories down and everybody in Optimization Centers, so I can understand going after the chems quickly. Galois has actually also transitioned out of carbon and into chemical refineries, which presents an opportunity for pirates, potentially, as Lyle is our player with teleportation, so Galois can't defend himself from pirates for these chem refinery tiles and the chemicals they'll be producing. Lyle's still stuck back on HQ5. This is why I was questioning these stock purchases. I don't think they were necessary in any way, so Lyle has been paying down debt a fair bit. He's been buying up stock, all these other things. He does have this off-world market down, which is the strongest thing he has going for him. Also, just recently caught something with that, I do believe. Caught Galois trying to trigger dynamite on that, which is always nice to see. FoxBlazing gets hit by a nuke. I do believe that was on a high water tile. So now all of these are mediums instead of highs. You're gonna need more nukes than that, though, to shut down a player with slant drilling. I don't know if that's really going to be cost effective moving forward this game. Mule auction, always a little awkward. Not entirely sure what players can do with that, but of course silicon is always available, and that's what Galois is going to be doing. He's just going to make sure he's got a little silicon secured. FoxBlazing, trying to get down some medium silicon. What I would love to see now, actually, is a nuke right on this silicon. This is what you're looking for, right? It knocks this tile down to a low, this tile down to trace, and this tile down to trace. That's massive amount of silicon taken off the table that Galois could utilize. Then combined with that mule and his own silicon quarry, that could be a fair amount of money in his pocket. We do see more dynamites coming down on those optimization centers, which is creating an interesting situation of dynamite starting to creep up in price, which is making the off-world market more and more tempting. You can see that Lyle, because he's had the only off-world market and it's been exposed, he's just been consistently shut down there, not making a whole lot of money from it. You can see he's still behind on cash compared to FoxBlazing and Galois. But soon, he should start to be able to keep that online. Of course, slowdown strikes are still available. This is the thing. There are a lot of aggressive tools here. And along with spies, it's just making it so difficult for Lyle to keep up this early off-world market. He has to consistently repair it. That costs electronics. That costs glass. It's costing carbon, which a lot of players have now transitioned back into in response to all this dynamite raining down on this market. And, of course, the chemical and electronics production that's been available. Lyle, I have to disagree with this. This is something that a lot of players need to consider when they pick up teleportation, is aluminum is so cheap right now. It's $15. There's not a lot of pressure on it. It's pretty much exclusively from the off-world markets. He's already got some aluminum production up here. He's committed 3 tiles to aluminum that are virtually dead right now. One of them has even been nuked. But he's already committed all of his tiles. He would have to buy an extra tile, an extra claim, in order to get a triangle going here, when it would have been quite easy for Lyle to maybe take away one of these electronics factories, maybe just spread some of this out, just remove some of the vulnerability here and put one of these production centers out here, which is not only is it away from your base so people don't look for it as much, so you might be able to surprise people by having this like hidden production center, which is always great, but it's also just separated in terms of the black market, so it's not as easy to hit when attacking everything else with things like these power surges and slowdown strikes. I'm really concerned for Lyle that he's so vulnerable to black market. Initially, I was going to be worried about that for FoxBlazing, because FoxBlazing, the primary downside to FoxBlazing's found is the fact that they're in a crater, and therefore they can't spread out much, very vulnerable to power surges and slowdown strikes, which are both available this game. Definitely a concern. And other players had the opportunity to kind of spread out a little bit more, make themselves less vulnerable. You can see that Crabtree and Galois have both done that. But Lyle, he's still all really packed tight because he went up against this cliff. He had this kind of like mountainy area, this hilly area right next to him. It's been causing problem. It's been very difficult for him to spread out. And I think that that black market is going to continue to be a problem for him. You can see a pretty big slowdown strike landing right now. Not what you're going to be looking for. Oh, excuse me, there's that cough. Crabtree has managed to secure all of his own stock, which is definitely a positive thing for him. On the negative side, though, still no off-world market, which you'd think would be fairly cheap for him as an expansive player. No real tech to speak of in that you have no optimizations. Trying to go into carbon scrubbing, but I don't know how valuable that is in a game when you've got dry ice available already. Maybe there was a better commitment that could have been made with this tile into another optimization center, into an off-world market, tools like that could have been available. I have not pointed out, and I really should have, by the way, that Lyle has had this uncontested Pleasure Dome like all game. And you can see how ridiculous that's gotten at this point. 483. Somebody else really needed to drop a dome like here, maybe up in this area somewhere. You can't drop here. These tiles kind of bother me. You can't tell, but these tiles are technically part of this crater here, which is awkward because they're so far away from the crater, it feels like. But no, that's not a tile that's actually available. You got to watch out for those. Anyway, FoxBlazing now has an off-world up as well, The tech, if it's positioned well, should be making a difference at this point. We can see double food production tech over here. Lyle operating on single food production, heading into 2 now. Galois with no food production, and just the 1 chemical. I would have liked to see a further commitment to these chemicals. Like, Galois has upgraded chemicals, but then stopped making them, which I think is a big concern, because look at all these optimization centers. There are 4 of them online right now. Crabtree with a patent lab also. Like, I don't think there's a good reason to have gotten completely out of the chemicals. They were on top of the carbon, and so yeah, get out of the carbon. But these chemicals should still be quite valuable even with this high carbon price. They're just sitting at $303 a piece right now. Galois is going ahead and transitioning into an off-world market, which is just fine. That was an auction for a claim for $10,000. That one I'm less sure about. I mean, $10,000 is pretty darn cheap. Where are you going to send it, Lyle? That's the question. I think it literally just landed right here. That's beyond depressing. Down here, round out this triangle. Use these tiles. You have teleportation. Like, literally at this point of the game, I recommended electronics earlier. I think that still would have been a decent option, even with this high carbon price. Electronics are still going to be making you some money when you've got all that adjacency running. But at this point, everybody's moved into this off-world phase, and you can see that oxygen you would expect to get expensive eventually, right? You can just turn these into dry ice for all I care, right? Make dry ice so that you've got the oxygen for the off-world markets and you're collecting carbon for the time being. And then you don't even necessarily need to transition later depending on where that oxygen price lands, because people are going to be trying to launch that off-world. Just all kinds of things that are important to consider. We do have an off-world market up for Lyle, FoxBlazing, and Galois at this point. Galois is trying to head to his second one, which is pretty aggressive but reasonable, I'd say. You can see that black market is getting pretty expensive, and Galois has actually managed to get into a pretty strong position overall, transitioning back into carbon. I don't know what these were for just a moment there, but back into the carbon he goes. Only $47, now $33 carbon. Carbon is falling off in price pretty rapidly. So I do wonder if we're going to see more off-worlds landing pretty soon, or if we're going to see attempts at buys coming up pretty soon. FoxBlazing feeling the need to defend themselves. FoxBlazing does have 2 off-worlds up as well. They just haven't managed to stay online, which is why FoxBlazing is so far behind on cash, or at least one of the reasons. Certainly. Let's see, oxygen sitting at 64. There's a lot of oxygen production on this map. All this dry ice over here really making a difference in affecting that price. A lot of electrolysis reactors as well. Fox, though, I'm concerned about Fox. I think this debt is going to be the death of them. You can see Lyle almost has the cash right now to go after this kill, and you can just see the stock price difference really causing huge, huge problems. So Lyle looks like going to be in a position to actually close it out against Fox. Just debt causing too many problems. A lot of vulnerability to the black market, I would say, getting those 2 off-worlds online. That's just 2 places that you can be hit instead of 1. Maybe not enough use of the goon squads, and also just not transitioning these aluminum mines. Always a big concern for all of our players. Now, Lyle can't quite finish it up just yet. Fox can keep paying down debt and try to stay alive in this one as long as possible, but I gotta say, Lyle's setting themselves up in a really nice position to go ahead and finish things off fairly quickly. More underground nukes coming down on water this time, it looks like. Man, yeah, that is a lot of nuking going on. It was just both water tiles back to back, I think. That's just disgusting, especially by 2 different players. Everybody's concerned about Lyle. Nobody wants to let him just go ahead and take the game. Crabtree has managed to get to 2 off-worlds themselves at this point, so really pulled themselves back into this game. And Galois, his cash has just kind of evaporated. I don't know where he's managed to put it, but you can see that all of these, like, pairs rather than triangles possibly costing Galois quite badly. And Lyle, finally, with just this massive amount of production. I actually really need to check this right now, because I think this is making a pretty big difference this game. Yeah, Lyle with 4 claim purchases, FoxBlazing with just 1. You can really see the pain of that. And Lyle picked up another one, at least that late one off of the auction. Definitely a bit of a concern there. And of course, this Pleasure Dome. I'm going to look at the end of this game what this Pleasure Dome made. It's going to be disgusting. Like, this is almost an off-world market. Like a standard off-world market, that's about what this looks like. It's absolutely terrifying to have to deal with something like this going on. And I think this is the primary thing that let Lyle stay in this game and really dominate things.
Successful off-world ship.
Even with these extra dead tiles. Oh, we do finally see a transition into glass. That's always nice to see. But you have to respect the Pleasure Dome. Every single time, you have got to respect the Pleasure Dome. It's such an important building. I haven't really checked Lyle's tech in a while. And you can see Lyle's got a nice, decent spread of tech. None of it's super great. Oxygen did spike eventually, by the way. I just want to point that out. So this oxygen production is going to be absolutely fantastic. That's why I'm actually a little concerned about this glass here. I wonder if it would have been better off as oxygen production in the form of those condensers. Especially because carbon's now expensive, but of course with the stockpile of 800 carbon on Galois, it's not actually that expensive. Everything gets a little awkward at this point. But glass, of course, consumes more oxygen, which just makes things a little more awkward all around. Let's see, who's going to win this race between Galois and Crabtree? Crabtree's really managed to pull this back into something. I think these solar condensers have been working wonders for him. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous the amount of money that he can make off of these. Off of these scavenger players as well, who should really have enough carbon production, but not managing it very well with all of the dynamite coming down in particular, I think. A lot of people weren't expecting those massive, massive repair prices that were coming through. So I think that's caused a pretty serious problem for our scavengers, and it's made carbon just a strange, difficult to manage resource all game long. Whereas Crabtree, he's just been kind of raking it in by selling it back to the market, not needing to worry about the price too much, just trying to make his money. And now that the carbon's dead, well, oxygen's there to make these buildings stay profitable. Crabtree is actually closer to the purchase on Galois than Galois is to Crabtree, but meanwhile Lyle is just sitting around like, yeah, I have a $2,000 subsidiary. Yeah, I've got double Offworld. Oh, I still have this Pleasure Dome, which is absolutely disgusting. And I'm fairly certain he also has the best tech in the game. Crabtree's actually headed into just straight oxygen tech, which is almost always a bit of an overcommitment to go for, especially the 4th pip here. It's so expensive to get the 4th pip because it costs, I believe, 80 chemicals for that 4th one as opposed to 20, and you're still getting the same boost in optimization each time. So it's a really, really heavy commitment to that oxygen that you definitely need to be concerned about. Crabtree is going to get the buy onto Galois. Well done for him, but unfortunately Lyle is already in a position where he can start making these purchases. He'll get this 5 stock bot up very, very quickly, and at that point he'll just be waiting for probably about $650,000, which he won't be that far away from. He should be about halfway to the remainder of this purchase at this point. And you can see, of course, Crabtree's stock just falling rapidly because he's lost 5 of his stock recently. So I'm not sure what his true price is. Let's see, target value per share 25, but then we have the multipliers on top of that, which just makes everything difficult, and I'm not going to bother trying to do the math. Regardless, Crabtree's price headed back up. That's why I estimated around 650. And this game is just about done, I would say. You can see that, yeah, Crabtree only has $200,000 less than Lyle, but he still has all 10 stock to buy through, whereas Lyle only has 5 remaining. On top of that, Galois is only pulling in about $60 per share. FoxBlazing is pulling in $240 per share. So Lyle will be taking this momentarily. I appreciate Crabtree trying to hang on. I mean, you can see he also has no debt. He's just trying to stay alive. And each purchase that he makes pushes Lyle further away from that goal. So, you know, he's trying to stay in it the best that he can. Lyle could cancel out and finish the game at any moment at this point. He's just letting the launches complete. He's at no risk, so he doesn't really need to be trying all that hard. But he does finally go ahead and clean up the game. Alright. Let's go ahead and take a look. So, big thing here is we can see that our 2 players that I was focused on the most, which were kind of our top 2, where Lyle eventually kind of won that struggle. You had 24 black market purchases to 26 over here. That is a respectable amount of black market purchasing going on. Crabtree down at 10. Never really in the game, so had a hard time really making an impact, although with that initial nuke, that was quite amusing, at least, onto some of the aluminum patches. Although I don't know if that was the best idea out of Crabtree to be nuking aluminum when he didn't have aluminum production himself. I wonder how much harm that did compared to good for him. Late claim buys out of Crabtree as well. Very, very expensive compared to these earlier claim buys out of Lyle. So that's a really big difference. You can see that our scavengers, they made their claim buys on day 1, 2, and 3 almost exclusively. Lyle picks up 1 more on day 7, which is going to be a bit expensive, but possibly the right decision at that point, given where black market was. But days 1, 2, and 3 claims are so much more valuable. They cost way less money, for one thing, because you're getting to them quickly. And of course, they last for the entire game. So, I mean, a day 1 pickup on a claim for these two players, well, that effectively lasted all but 1 day of the game. So it lasted like 80-90% of the game for how long this game went. That's a really massive claim. As opposed to a late pickup on a claim over here, like the day 6 claim lasted maybe half the game, the day 9 claim maybe a third of the game, maybe a quarter of the game, sorry, at best. Alright, let's go over to the balance sheet. We can see that Lyle made a lot off Offworlds. I think Lyle's Offworlds were just online more than FoxBlazing's were. He did a good job keeping them online, whereas FoxBlazing was really getting hit hard by the black market, unfortunately. Galois in particular. Let's see. FoxBlazing, what did Galois hit? So Galois did a lot of damage to FoxBlazing and some to Lyle as well. Mostly pirates, though, so who knows exactly how much of an impact that had. And Lyle, of course, he lasted a lot longer, so you'd expect his off-world profits to be a lot higher. But what we need to go and see is right here. 442,000. I just want to point out, if we take the fact that Lyle had 2 off-worlds, and then, you know, divide by 2, 400,000, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure he made more off that Pleasure Dome than he did off of the off-world markets once they're averaged out. Miscellaneous revenue, that was going to come from, let's see, a patent. So that's just fine. Dividend revenue was pretty massive. You can see once he got to FoxBlazing, it was going to be impossible to keep up with Lyle, just because FoxBlazing was worth so much money. Interest charges were pretty bad for Lyle, but once you're making enough money, interest won't kill you, typically. You have to be kind of either in a 1v1 scenario or not making much money for interest to truly kill you. If you manage to invest correctly and use all that debt appropriately, then it's actually really hard for those interest ticks to take you out completely in an FFA. Alright. Man, really expensive black market purchases. I'm just kind of interested in this because this was a bit of an awkward game and that FoxBlazing had a lead for a very long time for the most part. But I think Lyle's Pleasure Dome just kept him so solidly in it. And I kind of want to compare these two in particular. You can see that Lyle bought a lot of power in particular. Let's see. Sold a lot of water, though. That's going to be making a big difference. Lyle, it looks like also using that auto-selling a bit more. I'm trying to see where all the money is. Silicon making a bit of a big difference. Chemicals are a huge thing. I mean, just look at the chemicals down here. So 150 purchased to 634 sold, compared to 42 purchased and 197 sold. I think Lyle was acting like the only one who understood what chemicals were going to do in the late game, especially with all those optimization centers online. And you can see that really had a big impact in pulling him through that game, making about as much as his Pleasure Dome did. So like chemicals plus Pleasure Dome, I guess, are the two big culprits that game. You can see electronics did very well as well. Just those late game resources that Lyle positioned himself toward, combined with, of course, his truly massive amount of production from all those extra claims. That's what's really was going to carry him through. An interesting game. Perfect electronics production, yeah. That's pretty ridiculous. An interesting game. A nice way to start.